So,
cool.
That's good.
Wow.
Hey there.
Yeah.
So,
Hi.
we're joined by a very lovely couple by the names of
Zelma and Butch.
Zelma and Butch. Well, we are Zelma and Butch. We are giving away some free blood to people who would like to tell us what's your favorite horror movie. The Creature of the Black Lagoon. Very nice.
The original Wolfman.
Why do you like the creature from the Black Lagoon?
It was so corny, but it's so good. She's screaming in her bathing suit and it's grabbing her, and it's like, look at this guy.
And he's just like,
please
And his mouth is kind of moving like that a little bit, you know.
and he's just smashing lamps like, fuck this lamp, fuck this lamp.
I can't believe this. he's more just an angry teenager throwing a tantrum, right?
He is.
Yeah, I want Bella Lugosi's vampires.
Yeah.
Go, Dave. Go, Dave.
Yeah, go ahead, tell us about it.
One of the best actors there ever was, but he played the part so perfectly that it'd scare anybody.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, we actually just got done recording our last episode about vampires, so that's really awesome.
Yeah, he was good. And Lon Chaney Jr. is a Wolfman. You can't beat him.
Yep. See, that was my favorite original one, was the Wolfman. I love werewolves.
Did you ever see the remake, the one with Benicio del Toro? His remake?
Yeah, but it's not the same. They're not the same.
What did you think about it? I mean, aside from it not being the same.
It didn't have that scary factor to it like the other ones did. I don't know if it's because it's black and white and just,
Right.
you know.
Black and white made it perfect.
Oh, it did.
We're giving away free blood if you'd like to tell us what your favorite horror movie is.
Selma and Butch here. Do you want to join us?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. We're recording our live podcast. What's your favorite horror movie?
You got to come in close.
Yeah.
Because my voice won't carry.
Actually, that carried very well.
I get that a lot. Gonna have to go with The Wolfman, 1941.
Ah! Yeah, we actually just said that was ours.
Do you like Creature of the Black Lagoon, though?
I do, actually.
Isn't that just so corny? It's good.
Well, it's what it comes down to is the skill of the stuntman in the suit, being able to do those underwater scenes, swimming around.
It's
limited
impressive.
air.
And
It's
grabbing a chick in
genius.
the bathing suit that's screaming. I mean, why is there such stupid chicks in these?
Well, in all reality, it's funny that you brought up Creature of the Black Lagoon as an example. She was actually quite an individual. She was headstrong. She knew what she was doing. She was a strong swimmer. And it actually portrayed that rather well, which was why she was even brought out on the expedition to begin with.
The swimsuit had to go. The was on the top.
But yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of old Universal. I mean,
Yes.
Frankenstein and Dracula started it all, 1931. You know, several hit or misses, you know, throughout the next decade. Then The Wolfman just was a home run. I mean, Creighton Chaney, who was known as Lon Chaney Jr.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, over 6 feet, you know, you're definitely going to be a monster for Universal if you go into acting. So, I mean, even though his father was the man of 1,000 faces and, you know, did brilliant Quasimodo and everything like that, but then you fast forward to his son, and his son actually got to play most of the Universal Monster movie monsters. So he played Wolfman, he was... Dracula in Dracula's son.
I forgot that.
He was Frankenstein's monster in a movie. I mean, he was a big guy, so he couldn't really, you know, be with some of these actresses and make them swoon in a romantic drama by them being 5'2", and then him having to pick them up to be able to be like, yes, let's kiss at the end of this sunset.
You know, I'd rather be the monster.
So is George.
So I mean, if you're gonna
You
pick up
do.
a damsel, then you're gonna be a monster.
The chicks love the kiss, guys. You know, I mean, she was fighting the monster, but the whole time she's really wanting to do him. You know.
And that's how you get The Shape of Water.
Did you see that?
To
movie?
where they finally consummated. Oh my god!
Did you believe that?
And I have all the remastered of the Wolfman and that.
Oh yeah, same here.
Oh,
I love it.
I was showing you today. Yeah.
I mean, just everything about it. the actors, the story, the Jack Pierce makeup,
Oh yeah.
doing the full Wolfman makeup after he did Frankenstein for Boris Karloff. Just a genius work, and it's such an inspiration to everybody that did everything great from the 80s and beyond, like Rick Baker, who did American Werewolf in London.
That one
Which is
freaked me
that's
out.
my favorite werewolf
That one
movie.
freaked me out. I got scared from that one still.
Well, like what I like about it is the change, like the entire changing scene. It still holds up today. Like
Oh,
it's so done so well. It has never been topped in my opinion.
He's
Maybe
in
you also
that
have to thank
marshes.
David Naughton for that too. 'Cause having him as an actor screaming at the prosthetic,
Yeah.
if he didn't sell it, nobody would.
I know.
Otherwise, you're just kind of going, okay.
Yeah, because you imagine the whole time he's like, wow, yeah, this is happening
You're
now.
like, ow, 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 ow. But if you're screaming at it, like you've just gone through, breakage, then it's brilliant.
I have to bring up Young Frankenstein. Who doesn't love it? He's still got the chorus.
Oh, yeah.
Terry Gard.
You know the words.
For the longest time, there was a rumor that her name in German meant horse. But it was just a rumor. I mean, but it was so funny how people were trying to come up with these rational reasons as to why the horses were winning every time you mentioned their name. Until Mel Brooks came out and he's like, I don't know, it's the name I came up with.
It was
sounded
funny.
funny.
Yeah, it was funny.
It's just go with
I gotta
it.
ask, are you guys gonna beat the zombie crawl? Because it's a kick.
Yes, absolutely. Oh,
You've
no,
done
I-
it before?
We want to
Yeah,
go.
every year
Yeah.
for the past.
It is such a hoot, you guys.
Yeah.
These
10 years?
costumes you see.
We'd like to try and go, but I'm fairly certain I'm working through it, so it's kind of
which
like,
one?
yeah.
Actually?
I always
In
work every year because I work in the kitchen,
Oh,
so I usually work on the
yeah,
weekends.
downtown Fort Collins.
Okay, yeah, it's unofficial, meaning
The
that.
Saturday before the Halloween, yeah. You guys
The
got it.
20th.
It's a hoot. Some of the stuff you see there.
Actually, next Saturday.
Yeah, next Saturday, next
We're trying
week.
to find him a pimp costume.
There's pimp costumes here.
What a glowing endorsement. Yeah, there's my man, the pimp. That's how he got me.
Yeah, it really
Told her
was.
I'd have to check out her credentials.
We're starting a whole new horror story
Yeah,
here.
exactly.
No offense.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll see you down there next Saturday night.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll
We didn't want to
be in
hoard
makeup
in,
and
but
stuff.
Oh no,
That's all good.
No, this is a
Yeah,
perfect
yeah,
introduction.
this is
Which, by the
great.
way, if you don't already know, listeners, this is the Punk Rock Horror Podcast. I'm Matt,
I'm Cody.
we're Zelma and Butch.
and
David.
Nice to meet you, David.
Oh,
Well, thank you guys so much
Yeah,
for
thank you.
popping in. Here's
enjoy your free blood.
oh, we're going to.
Free blood,
Oh,
free
thank you so
blood,
much.
free blood.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
This
thank
is-
you so
it was-
much.
Thank you for sitting down with us.
Yeah,
talking
that was
with
a
us.
great introduction for a podcast.
Yeah, that worked out well.
Nicely done, guys.
Oh man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool. And so actually it's kind of funny the fact that we were talking about Creature of the Black Lagoon is actually a good segue into our monster for the episode, which we're talking about mermaids and sirens.
So
Yeah.
David, if you want to sit down and hang out with us, we're going to be talking about it. And
Yeah, if you don't mind.
yeah, feel free to pull up a
I
chair.
love talking this stuff.
Sounds good. Yeah, and you're more than welcome to chime in if you ever have any fun facts about them.
You mean about mermaids and sirens?
yeah.
Because, Greek mythology used to be my thing way back in the day.
Oh, really? Nice. Perfect person for this.
Yeah. Isn't that weird how the world works?
Well, you guys came to the right place.
Yeah.
Is the thing. So, I mean, life of the party. This place has had a reputation in this town for a very long time now, and this is your one-stop shop for a lot of the things. I don't work here, so I'm not.
Oh, no,
trying
you're
to
good.
Build a plug.
No,
for this
it's,
place.
no, you're fine. I'm good friends with Brandon and Marcia,
Yeah,
so
okay.
like
So that's cool.
we already have a
Okay,
plug
good.
in. So
And I was really good friends with the previous owners and the previous owners before that. So I've been coming to this shop for quite some time. It used to be
Nice.
based in Old Town Fort Collins.
yeah, that's
too.
right. Like, wasn't it just right by the White Rabbit? Was where it used to be.
That's one of the spots, actually.
Oh, okay.
There's
'Cause that's the one that I
on
remember.
South College, just south of Mountain Avenue,
Mm-hmm.
and then one on Mountain Avenue.
Okay.
There was two spots downtown. So
Okay.
things get expensive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, especially downtown.
Right.
So we're talking about mermaids today.
Yeah.
So, when women began competing in the Olympics during the early 1900s, swimming was a popular sport. These women were often called mermaids to make them seem weaker, as culturally mermaids were seen as beautiful and fragile creatures. In reality, though, sirens and mermaids have been seen in early history as dangerous creatures that lured in sailors. The first stories appeared in ancient Assyria, in which the goddess Atargatis transformed herself into a mermaid out of shame for accidentally killing her human lover. Mermaids are sometimes associated with perilous events such as floods, storms, shipwrecks, and drownings. In other folk traditions, or sometimes within the same tradition, they can be benevolent or beneficent, bestowing boons or falling in love with humans. Do you want to take on this next part?
Yeah. The Fiji mermaid. Yeah. In 1842, showman P.T. Barnum began displaying the infamous Fiji mermaid, which faced lots of criticism for being a real mermaid, quote-unquote, as Barnum claimed. Many believed it to be just a front of a monkey put together in the back with the back of a part of a fish. Supposedly, the creature was burned in a museum fire somewhere between 1865 and 1880. Since then, other evidence of, quote-unquote, real mermaids have been seen as possibly being works of Barnum, or at least inspired by his work. However, there have been early depictions from Japan of this type of Fiji mermaid. Different types of mer creatures have been depicted in art form from several cultures found as far back as thousands of years. This includes areas such as Mesopotamia, Syria, Greece, Africa, Australia, and Europe. Though some of these pieces may be associated more with gods, goddesses, and spirits from the ocean rather than what we usually see as mermaids, depictions of mermaids are often of a human torso and a fishtail. Thus, interpretations of mermaids are oftentimes influenced by cultures from all over the world.
The magazine The Pacific Fisherman often romanticized mermaids by drawing them as beautiful creatures of the sea. This is only one example of how women's beauty has been used to make mermaids seem a lot less scarier than they have been viewed historically. So, there we go. There's our little history about mermaids. There's obviously way more about that, and one thing I do want to say is that one of the most interesting cultural adaptations of a mermaid is Japan's version. I actually forget the name of the creature, but it's a woman's face on the body of a snake. Mm-hmm. And so apparently, the lore is that she'll be coddled in a blanket on the beach, looking like she's coddling her child. And when you get close enough, apparently she turns around and paralyzes you and drains your blood with her tongue. Right. In some depictions, she even strangles a person with her hair, which makes kind of the whole snake body useless. But whatever.
Yeah, they also do that version.
Redundant.
Yeah, exactly.
one of those things where you understand historically where the term man-eater came from. It actually comes from, this idea that femininity is dangerous to masculinity, oddly enough. Big topic in today's news about such things. Right. But, you get these things of beauty that are meant just to lure so that you're the next meal. Mm-hmm. And that was actually the truth of it. Even in Greek mythology, where you had a major god, Poseidon, ruler of the oceans, decides to follow in the footsteps of his baby brother Zeus and just start tapping creatures left and right, pardon my expression, and which then gives birth, he has a sea sprite, gives birth to Triton, half man, half fish, typical, Disney king of the ocean type thing. Yeah. And then he spawns an entire race of mer people, and then they, in different depictions, you've got these just hideous creatures that are just under the waves, meant to feed on man. Yeah. They're responsible for shipwreck. They're responsible for storms. Like you read earlier, every bad omen regarding the ocean. Yeah. Every bad circumstance. That's where you would lay the blame was, Triton's pissed off. He just sent people after my bow. And so then you've got the other aspect of it is, how would these creatures get close enough to man if they were such a fearful thing?
the beautiful voices.
Now
Yeah,
you've
they would
got-
lure sailors with
Yeah,
their
now
song.
you've got a way to lure. Now things are added into the mythology and into the legend.
Yeah.
Things of beauty. They sing so well. And then Disney grabs it, and now it's one of the most cutest things ever.
Well, and what's funny about that is so Little Mermaid traditionally is a really dark story.
Yeah, the
it was-
original one.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
It's really bad. But if we talk about Peter Pan real quick, like even in Peter Pan though, they talk about like mermaids are bad, stay away from them, not okay. Although I will make the argument for Disney's case is that they did kind of correct it with one of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, where like
Yeah.
they did actually get attacked by man-eating mermaids, and I'm just like, okay, that's more correct.
You know, I even got to give it up to that the original animated Peter Pan, because they're sitting there. We just want to play with her as they're trying to pull Wendy under.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought that was genius. I was
Yeah.
like, that's exactly
It's subtle.
what they would do.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't so on overt. Hey,
Yeah.
these are killers.
Yeah.
They will eat you. It was,
They just want
We
to
just
play.
wanna drown her.
And then
drown her.
hold her under water.
Well, a lot of
Slowly
people.
suffer from lack of oxygen.
Well, and just like a lot of folklore, there tends to be more depictions and like sightings of, well, quote unquote sightings of like female mermaids, as to where there's been somewhat male mermaids. Like in Scottish folklore, there's the blue men who
Right.
have this like actual like finned like legs and like like actually do walk on like two legs under the sea and
Oh,
whatnot.
aye, men of the loch. Actually, they go right back. It's Scottish background, so I love all that too. Excuse me, sorry. It comes
No,
out
you're
every
good.
once in a while. Especially when I'm drinking. So, apologies. But,
No, you good.
Yeah, and that's funny that you bring up the blue men too. And one of the famous folk or cryptozoological monsters in Scotland is the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah.
You guys have all heard of that.
Yeah.
Nessie.
Which I still argue could actually exist, and I do have a way to prove that.
We'll have to get into that. But in all actuality, it's this type of creature that is meant to be along the lines of a lot of the ocean-type mythological creatures like the blue men and everything.
Right.
That all survive in a society underneath the waves.
Right.
So, and Loch Ness actually ties into that, which is why it's like such a famous creature being in a lake of all
Yeah.
things, where normally those things would be the sea monsters
Yeah.
that work together in this little like merman society and stuff like that. It's actually it could go all off, and I'm sure this is like a lot of rumor to some people, and some people are like, no, that's a load of blatherskate. That's just bollocks right there. But
Yeah.
it all does tie into cultural icons, actually, in that all coastal cultures have some kind of
Yeah.
story about this.
Yeah. No,
Well,
and I mean, we could even like, I think, put mermaids in close to like universal monsters, where most universal monsters are can be due to like some sort of tragedy. They're the creatures of tragedy, because like the first mermaid was like apparently like a failed suicide, and that's how the first mermaid came to be. But I cut you off. What were you gonna say?
Honestly, well, like, because I was just thinking about having the mermaid on the bow of ships and stuff like that. Like, I always thought maybe that was a way of like appeasing the mermaids, because pirates are very superstitious.
Yeah, like a decoy or something.
Yeah, so it's like a decoy, like either that, or it's just like maybe if we put our effigy. Our effigy of a mermaid on the front of the ship, it'll appease the sirens. They'll leave us alone. They won't. It'll bring us good luck instead.
Right, like
And
the
then-
golden calf type.
Yeah,
idea.
exactly. And then also, it's kind of cool where like the history of mermaids come from for each culture. Like, for instance, the ones in have you heard of the manatee mermaid theory? Where like, I'm gonna ruin this for Lauren. Where the reason why people started seeing mermaids in like the warmer climates, like down in South Florida, South Pacific and stuff, where all the manatees are, was because the mermaid and the sailors and stuff were all at sea for months without any female interaction. And they'd see a manatee when they're coming back, and they're all like, sickly and stuff like that, because they were out at sea. They didn't know about medicine and stuff. They thought just drinking limes and lemons was the best cure for everything, and rum.
They weren't a bright bunch.
Yeah.
They weren't a bright bunch.
So they'd see these manatees wading in the water, and they're all delusional, and and fun fact about a manatee, it's genitalia is the closest one to a human woman's genitalia. So they would think, oh my God, it's a beautiful woman in the sea that can breathe underwater. And they'd hop in, try and mate with it, and drown. And so that's where, like, also the fact of mermaids drowning men came from, and drowning the sailors. It's because they'd hop in and they were being lured by this beauty.
Dude's delirious by heat, suffering from scurvy, didn't have enough lemon, jumped in after a nice, pale, fleshy creature. And,
Yeah, just waiting in the water.
You know, we all
But-
make mistakes at the bar.
You know,
I was going to say,
But the,
with
also
enough rum, anything's beautiful.
exactly. But you know what? The also cool thing that kind of ties into that is because when you see all the depictions back, just like this is a little off topic, but like all the old depictions of art of beautiful women and stuff, they were curvy, just like original mermaids were a little bit curvy because
Yeah.
they saw the manatee just floating there. So, well, I love curvy women. So,
Well, who doesn't? I
Exactly.
mean, even women love curvy women. So. But, I mean, well, okay, have you guys heard of the monster evolution theory?
no.
Yeah, bring it on in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's the idea that all of these things did exist, but in interbreeding with either humanity or themselves has basically wiped out entire species of monster, so to speak. So, for example, mermaids. You can only, first rule of genetics, spread the genes apart, but
Yeah.
royalty doesn't do that,
Yeah,
Like,
they-
okay, well, we need more, you can only breed with a royal, and
Yeah.
you've got inbreeding, and then you've got genetic problems that arise from that, and as evolution goes on, now you don't have, a really, okay, you take a look at Europe, please forgive me, and Scotland doesn't really get along with Europe, with England all that well to begin with.
Yeah.
We tried to secede twice now. But,
It's a work in progress.
Yeah.
we're working on it. We've got no
Getting
worries
there.
there. But anyway, so and then you look at the royalty of England, and it's like you don't have anybody that's really strong and charismatic. It's all hello, how are you doing? Mm-hmm. Oh, you're a carpenter. What is that? That type of thing. But then you.
Would you like some blood? You have to tell us what your favorite horror movie is.
Favorite ever. Right now, I just watched As Above, So Below.
So good.
That
We did a review.
Yeah, we did a review about that.
That was really, really. I haven't had anything that freaked me out that bad watching it.
It's a good one.
Right?
Time, so, yeah. But,
Nice. Solid
Free
choice.
blood?
Free blood.
That's great. But anyway, so the theory states that, let's say with the mermaids, you've got interbreeding and then crossbreeding with certain other mammalian life forms in the ocean, to where now you don't have any mer people whatsoever. You've got manatees, for example.
Yeah.
or narwhals, however you want to look at things. But it's
Narwhals,
Narwhals,
same
they're
thing.
amazing.
Ocean and breeding in the ocean.
same thing like with werewolves. Now you've got like people with hypertrichosis, and the extreme growth of hair. You've got people that can actually do the correct pitch of howl to actually communicate with wolves now, or you've got people that use their senses a lot more than like the average human would.
Yeah.
And they're able to do these things, and it's because all of these things did exist at one point, but have now just genetically spread into all of humanity, and now certain humans have certain aspects of these things.
Well, I will even say to go on to say why, if we're going on to the topic of how mermaids got even popular, is that I think the reason they got so popular is that they were kind of always have been just this figure for woman empowerment, because it's basically female characters luring men to their deaths with the sound of their voices. It's supposed to be this very empowering thing, because it's
Like a manatee.
I mean, more often than not in history you see men doing terrible things. Not saying that women don't, but I'm just saying you see a lot of men doing terrible things. Again, our last episode,
Especially
Vlad the Impaler, vampires, stinking people, right?
What I say, I mean, even when you think about especially sailors. I mean, most sailors back in the day, they were conquerors, so they would just go to like
they were pretty rough.
islands and rape and pillage, like Christopher Columbus, that piece of shit.
Yeah, and then you have mermaids. They're kind of like this anti-hero in folklore, where it's like they're not the greatest, but they're they're powerful in their own right.
Yeah, because one part of the lore was that they only attracted men.
And I think that's like one of the biggest appeals of mermaids, merpeople. And,
I mean, in male-dominated society, we had the males in charge. So we had male sailors, we had male captains. We didn't have a lot of female ones. I mean, unless they were, a lot of facial hair. which happened. Historically, it would happen. You'd see these chicks and be like, I've got more facial hair than you. You'd be like,
my name is Daisy.
I captain.
Yeah, for me, I'd be like, that's sad but true for me.
And which then made the idea of the soft melodic voice dangerous because, and you were talking about like delirium, and auditory hallucination is a thing, which
you start hearing things.
It's like, well, you start with a bit of tinnitus, you've got the ringing in your ear, high C, and then all of a sudden, you've got a little bit of motion sickness mixed in with delirium. Now that high C turns into a nice little melody that, even Beethoven couldn't have composed. And,
and then you see the manatee just waiting there.
And that dude was deaf. It's okay, we can make the joke. It's been long enough.
That's bragging rights. I'm deaf and I still wrote better stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's exactly. He's just, I wrote masterpieces. Oh man,
beautiful. Thank you for the Beethoven stuff too. It's always a good thing to talk about.
Yeah, it's just, we got to bring it up every now and then.
Lauren, you said you had a fun fact.
Yes. So bringing back to your manatee thing, when Christopher Columbus was actually sailing the ocean blue, he came across a couple of manatees, and he actually quoted, "They are not as beautiful as they are painted." And I thought that was really funny, because I'm just like,
Something surprised me.
mermaids.
So, Christopher, how did you with all the frustration on the high sea? Well, I'll tell you this, manatees
are not as beautiful, but
well,
you gotta do what you gotta do.
He never said he didn't.
Yeah,
he just said they weren't as beautiful.
And then from then on was bullied for the rest of his life.
Was chased out of most countries.
Yeah, no wonder he was so angry.
Usually being like, manatee fucker, and became motherfucker. That's how it started, right?
Pop culture reference.
And that's how we got the term.
I also think it's interesting how, like in Harry Potter, the Goblet of Fire, he has to go down into the sea, the mermaids that are down the lake. Yeah, I absolutely love that scene, because and the whole entire egg, like when he opens it above water, it's just like there's piercing screaming, and it's just like, but when he opens it underwater, it's like this beautiful melody, and it's so pretty, and it's so pure, and I'm just like, I love mermaids, just because if I was a mermaid, I would love to lure men to their death. And just...
Well then, here's an exercise for you. It's like, okay, try screaming hysterically out of water, and then see what it sounds like when you do it underwater. And see if it comes out as, oh hey, I'm a beautiful... It starts out pretty.
That crab could do it, I could do it. It's cool.
Yeah. You just have to slap on a Jamaican accent.
Oh, do it, Dusty. Oh, that's the key. Oh, man. We can jump into the movie reviews now, if we want. I mean...
Yeah. I had a lot of trouble trying to find movies with mermaids as the main focus of, like, the evil. What's a good horror movie, like, from your perspective, that possibly has, like, a mermaid? It doesn't even have to be, like, the main focus of it, because it was very hard to find those. Like, that has mermaids in it.
Right.
Or at least mermaids done right, in a sense. Like, I think whenever they're, like, these evil creatures, that's when they're done right. They are. Lauren, Splash is false.
I will fight you.
She lured Tom Hanks to his death.
Yeah.
And then, as he died, he imagined he was swimming to a nice little underwater city, but she was munching on his calf.
And then we got the movie Castaway.
Yeah. And then he escaped.
Splash is actually the prequel to Castaway.
Well, you would think it would have prepared him for that if that was the case.
It did not.
I'll just dive right back in and swim with Madison.
He has amnesia.
Because he got crunched on too hard.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
That's why he thought of volleyball as a person.
Well
These are
said.
people, right?
Well said.
well, okay, Daryl Hannah or Helen Hunt. Who would you end up with in regards to those? Because those are the heroines of both movies.
Daryl Hannah.
Helen Hunt.
Oh, see, now there's a debate. Right? But no, it's funny because Splash came to mind, but not even as like a a villain or anything. The creature from the Black Lagoon, obviously.
Really?
The Blue Man. That's what he reminds me of.
Yeah, literally.
Hello.
We were offered a can of vampire blood.
You have to tell us what your favorite horror movie is.
You got to say it loud.
Yeah, so
Wait, I have to think about it. What's my favorite horror movie?
That's a joke. That's mine.
Mandy.
Mandy.
Mine?
Just a scream. I don't know what yours is. We don't watch
I don't like
horror
horror
movies.
movies. I can tell you my favorite horror book.
That works.
Okay, that works.
Dracula.
Nice. That was a good one.
Solid choice.
You get some
I
fake
read the
blood,
whole
and you
book.
get some fake blood.
Thank you.
No problem. Awesome. All right, y'all
Thank
have
you.
a good night.
So, should we go ahead and just jump in?
Yeah, you go first since I did it last time.
All right. I decided to do 2001's Dagon.
Because you didn't want to do the musical.
So I can't do musicals. I'm sorry, man.
Dude, it was great. There's a badass punk rock scene you would have loved.
So Dagon, a boating accident runs a young man and woman ashore in a decrepit Spanish fishing town, which they discover is in the grips of an ancient sea god and its monstrous half-human offspring. It's directed by Stuart Gordon, written by Dennis Paoli, and the one and only H.P. Lovecraft. Stars Ezra Gonin, Francisco Rabal, and Raquel Moreno. So, I actually was really impressed by this movie.
It's Moreno.
You gotta be that guy.
Yeah,
You
there's
just
the
gotta be
Hispanic
that-
one here too.
Podcast over. So when I went to this, I was actually not gonna lie. The way it starts out, it starts off a little rough. It's kind of like very cheesy sci-fi filmed. Like it's very soft and just like it just feels like it's gonna be really bad in the beginning. It gets better throughout. So my pros is that it's H.P. Lovecraft. So obviously that's a pro. I'm gonna give it a pro. It's H.P. Lovecraft. He's like the Stephen King before Stephen King. The seaside town that's in this movie is perfectly melancholy and creepy the entire time. Like it looks like just a creepy mer people town. Like it's just so well done, and I like it when you can perfectly encompass like that melancholy feel in a movie. And it doesn't wait that long to actually jump in the story and jump into the lore, because like they crash the boat and then Paul, the hero, goes with Barbara to the shore to get help for their crashed boat, and they come back, and the other people they're with are dead now, and like this only happens like in the first 10 minutes, so it does not wait to jump into it. I'm like, okay, cool, we finally get to jump into the lore, like what's going on with this town, what's going on with this movie, like we don't have to wait around. Like they even introduces you to one of the priests on the island that they're sailing close to, and the priest like has gilled hands. And so you're just like, okay, something's going on. This movie does an excellent job at explaining the town's backstory, too. So Paul eventually finds out that all the people in this town are mer people. They're mer people, right? And so as he's running away because they're trying to attack him and kill him and whatnot and eat him, he's running away and he runs into a homeless man. And the homeless man actually explains the whole story of what happened to the town. Like, and it does it so well because it's not one of those just like, and that's when everything changed, and then like, like.
Well, I love the plot device. The one person that can tell you everything about it when really nobody wants to tell you nothing.
Yeah, and that's what I love about it, is that he explains everything, like, because they talk about the new religion of Dagon, and like how it got rid of the religion of Christianity in this town, and how it took over, and why they started following Dagon, and what Dagon did for this, seaside town. Like it was good. It did a really good job of like diving into the town's backstory. story, and that's what I loved it. There's also a point where Paul is trying to hotwire a car to escape, but instead flicks on the horn instead of turns on the car. And I love that, and I made that a pro because it's more realistic, because it's not like anyone can just like pop open the wires of like a car with no experience and then just hotwire it. Like either you're gonna die or you're gonna turn something else on, and it was realistic because he wasn't able to turn it on. He's like brrr, and like let all the other mer people around him know his location, and so I liked that. It was great. And then going more forward, our protagonist isn't your typical like horror movie macho guy. He's very nerdy, gangly, like not strong, cowardly a bit, like, and he has to like find his courage to save his girlfriend Barbara, you know. And so that's what I like, is that it wasn't your typical like
He has to question whether or not she's really worth it.
yeah like
Do I
yeah
really care that much?
exactly you know, it really
But
does.
damn, I have to get my hands
He
dirty.
really does too, and that's what I love about it, because it's really secure. It's like,
Do I really
because
love
normally
this
in this
girl?
type of movie, it's like some sort of dude that has some sort of trauma, and now he gets his trauma out by fighting more people. But that's not this case. It's like it's just this guy who's just like really good at like stock exchange, and he's just like I didn't ask for any of this.
He's like,
Do
I could count the mer people better than I could count them.
I could count your scales.
Yeah.
Speaking of scales,
6,448 on your left leg. It's weird.
no, you can't kill me.
Yeah.
I named each one.
Speaking of scales, the practical effects in this movie, the like makeup for like all the mer people was really good. Like the gills, scales,
What year
webbed
did this
hands.
come out?
2001.
Okay.
So I was pretty impressed because, and I'll get into, because it actually ties into my cons here in a second, but it's such a really good like practical effects, like makeup effects for this movie, especially because I feel like this is more of a low budget type of movie, so the practical effects were really more well done. Especially that fact, there's one scene in this movie to where the homeless man and Paul and another guy get captured, and so they're about to be like skinned alive, and in that scene they show like the full like scene of like one of the characters' face is getting skinned and pulled off. They show the whole thing, and they do it. It's all practical effects, and I was really impressed by that. Like, because I mean,
used for a fillet knife.
exactly.
Turning the tides. There.
Yeah, exactly. But it's
Cut my children.
But it's just so well done because they show like him peeling off the face, and it looks so real. And it's I was really impressed because at first I thought like this movie was gonna have like no gore, and like it was just gonna be really like kind of like soft and whatnot. But no, they like full on show the blood dripping. Like it was really good. I was really impressed. I was like, right on, hell yeah.
Well, if I may interject really quickly though,
Go for it.
That effect is kind of old school when you think about it, though.
Right.
I mean, like, it's a 2001 movie, yet if you look in the 80s at like Hellraiser,
Yeah, exactly.
they've got the skin peeling effects with the blood and everything like that big time. So
Yeah.
Exactly.
it's kind of an old effect, but just saying, you know, if they did it well, they did it well. That's cool. But
Yeah, because I say like some of the modern day ones, they'd rather use CG. You're
Yeah.
just like, hey.
I'll drink.
Or they'll do a cutaway scene, like that looks like they'll start it and then just cut away. No, it shows the whole thing, and I was really impressed by that. Like, especially for 2001, like right on. And the ending in this movie is actually really good because it sticks with like the H.P. Lovecraft lore and the ending of it. It's a bittersweet ending. It's not really happy. The twist, I don't want to give away the twist because the twist is so bananas that like you're just gonna have to watch it for
Wait, was
yourself.
that a hint? Bananas
Yes.
being the key
Everyone's
hint
actually
there?
monkeys.
Yeah.
They're all monkeys.
They weren't mer people. They were apes.
They were really
They
monkeys.
They were dirty apes.
Really, I just watched Congo.
Yeah, Statue of Liberty's in the background, all busted up.
You son
Charlton Heston comes out, and you're like, oh, it's that movie. What a twist.
It's a twist.
But I do have cons for this movie. So in the beginning, which I don't know why Paul would even go save Barbara, but Barbara is like a total jerk to Paul in the beginning of this movie. So like his whole job is to be like an accountant or like stock exchange or whatever. So he obviously has to carry his laptop with him, watch the stocks every single day, right? So he's supposed to be on vacation, so he's checking his stocks real quick. So Barbara instead grabs the laptop, goes to the top of the ship, and throws the laptop in the ocean. And she's like, "You need to learn to live life, Paul." And he's like, "You threw my work." in the ocean. I'm like, you should just throw Barbara in the ocean.
That hurt my feelings.
Right?
Like,
Are you sure she's not the mermaid?
I'm just like, she's the villain of this movie.
yeah, there you go. You
It's like-
clear cut it.
It's like,
right
don't.
there.
And when Barbara got captured, I'm like, just forget her, dude. Like, because then, like, the high priestess wants to mate with Paul, and I'm just like, dude, trade out. Like, I don't think the high priestess would have thrown your laptop into the ocean.
She understands because she has shit to do,
Yeah,
too.
she supports you, Paul. Forget Barbara.
But that's kind of redundant because they would have brought him into the ocean instead of the laptop.
Yeah, but
He could still
I'm
do
just
his
saying,
work.
He could
Start
figure it
counting
out.
fishtails.
Oh, there you go.
I just feel like it could have worked more with the high priestess. That's all I'm saying. And she got octopus tentacles for legs. So
Oh, wow. So,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You guys are probably a PG-rated podcast, right?
No, we're not.
no, not even close.
No.
Oh, well, then, how many tentacles? I mean,
Two.
how many spaces?
It's only
between?
two.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, two.
Yeah.
Like if it was octopus style with
Yeah,
eight,
because
then wait,
when she
how
she
many
takes off like her
pleasure
like
centers are we
what is
talking
it? Like, she takes off her blouse, and I was like, all right, how many we got going on? Like I was prepared for like 16 tentacles. It's like only 2 big ones. I'm like, all right.
Hey, you know what? Sometimes.
the disappointment of males everywhere. They pull open their shirt. Oh, only two of them.
Only
Total
2.
Recall ruined me for women.
I was expecting a third.
Which, speaking of the tentacles, the CG effects do not hold up well. I will say that when they have CG.
Like
in this movie-
2001?
Yeah, I know.
Oh, that's that sucks.
I'm just saying, compared to Jurassic Park.
Yeah, I know. That's the heyday of CGs. When CGI was
So-
early 2000s.
But it just doesn't hold up, so I have to make that a con. Also, there's a point where like Paul and Barbara are in a raft going to the shore to get help for the crashed boat, and then they hear far off that one of the people that they're sailing with on the boat shoots the gun inside of the boat to like fend off one of the mer people, and like that's what the scene suggests basically, and it's during a storm. Yet they were able to hear the gunshot go off inside a boat during a storm. And I'm like, look, I'm not like a scientist of sound or anything, but I feel like you wouldn't really be able to hear a gunshot go off in a storm under a boat that's already underwater.
Granted, but again, plot device. You might not know what happens unless you hear it. Kind of like you don't know about the
Right.
town until the homeless guy explains it to you. I mean, in reality, you wouldn't have somebody telling you stuff. You'd have to like find out each and every single step. You'd miss like 3 or 4 steps of the
Right.
actual plot, and then you'd be killed before you find out because that's how reality works.
And normally I
Yeah.
would give benefit of the doubt, but the thing is that the scene is that the boat and the raft are nowhere in the same like scene. The raft is completely in a different like part of the ocean. Like it's farther away, so I'm like, how would you hear the gunshot? It just doesn't during a storm. It's during a storm. I'm
Someone
like,
has rabbit ears.
I'm just like, because Paul's like, what was that?
Barbara has rabbit ears. That's why she's such an asshole. Because
Yeah.
everything.
Yes.
It was
Of course
it was
Barbara would hear
metaphorically
it.
implied is what it was. They thought they heard it.
Yeah.
And then they had to relay it on screen
Exactly.
by an actual
Right.
sound. So see, it was actually deeper than
What?
you thought.
Do they show
Yeah.
what the mermaids look like?
Yeah, they show the full on what the mer people look like and everything. Like it's fantastic. My other 2 cons though is that so Paul eventually he's in this motel and there's an angry mob that finds him and they go up to his room to try to like break down the door. He locks the door and he just like they're pushing on the door trying to get in and he's just like, can I help you? And I'm like, why would you respond to the angry mob trying to kill you? Like, get out. Also,
to kill me, but do you want anything? Water? Tea? Crumpets?
Yeah. Can I help you? It's like-
So it's the redundancy of somebody knocking on the door and yelling, "Nobody's home."
but he knows he
Yeah.
knows that the mob's coming for him, and he still responds. And I'm like,
I know you're trying to kill me, but I got some tea for you. Will that calm you down?
yeah. I was like, okay,
Let me live?
whatever, Paul, whatever. No, it's cool. I'll let it go. Like, I'll let it go because Barbara's a jerk to you.
Well, was that a writing mistake, or do you think that was like an ad lib by the actor that they're just like, that was hilarious, keep it in?
I have no idea. I'm hoping
That would
it's
be
louder.
awesome.
Because otherwise, the writing is shot for the whole film.
Also,
You blame the writer for that.
Also, throughout the movie, the sound effects are left to be desired in this one. So they're just. It's just like the sound designer, I feel like, kind of took the day off and let the new guy take over. Because the sound doesn't always match up. Like, it'll be like someone hits someone, and then a second later, psh, like, does the actual sound effect. Or like, slap noise. Yeah, so it's
So
just
a little bit of editing. Is the
yeah,
problem.
it's just really kind of So
the editor's sitting there going, close enough.
Yeah, he's like, good.
And I do have like WTF like things about this movie as well. Is that Paul straight up could win a Lee Winnell lookalike contest. So the protagonist from Saw is what I'm talking about. Like, straight up just looks just like him, and I'm like, alrighty then. And then there's just a weird part in this movie where Paul is walking through the town looking for help by himself, and there's just this creepy guy, and he just looks like the creepy guy's just like raking seaweed off the street, which I guess makes sense. It's a seaside town, but it's just really weird because it's the only guy he finds, and then the creepy dude raking the seaweed looks up at Paul and like points his like rake at Paul. He's like, nah! He goes back, and I honestly think he's probably our new friend. It's just random though. It's just a random dude raking seaweed. I'm like, okay, whatever, cool dude.
See, I can't even think of like that being a standard ingredient for horror. It's like you gotta have a creepy dude doing some like random task.
He's just raking seaweed.
I think it's
the only job
between.
It's the only job he can do in town.
Village idiot.
Yeah.
Go rake seaweed.
Go rake
But they'll just be
seaweed.
more it'll keep him busy. Just let him keep doing it.
Just let him. I got my seaweed friends over here. I gotta feed my
I
fishies.
raked up 100 meters of seaweed today. My job here is done. Good
Wakes
job,
up to-
Opie. I mean,
Opie do good.
Yeah. He wakes up tomorrow
you're not getting a
morning.
paycheck.
Oh God.
You're raking it.
Here's
Yeah,
your
you're
bucket of fish heads.
Got your meal for the night.
Is it salmon today?
Opie eat good tonight. Anyway, that's why it was just weird. I'm like, okay, random dude raking seaweed, sweet. So to wrap it up, though, I actually love Dagon. It was a really good, rich in lore, mer people movie. It's fantastic to watch. It gets better as it progresses because it definitely starts off a little but it gets really good the more it goes through, the more it introduces the lore, the characters, the more people, the town, and you actually do get to see Dagon himself. And so that's why I like this movie. It's a good horror movie that focuses on mermaids. And I will now share a few quick facts about the movie, which is obviously this is based on the story The Shadow over Innsmouth by H.P. Lovecraft. The movie has been in various stages of production for well over 15 years. The chant by the locals at the sacrificial ceremony near the end, Ia Ia Cthulhu Thakin, appears in many H.P. Lovecraft tales shouted by followers of the Old Ones, which to any of our H.P. Lovecraft buffs out there, you know what we're talking about.
The Call of Cthulhu. I mean,
Exactly.
The chant.
The H.P. Lovecraft quote shown just before the credits is a paraphrasing of the last line of The Shadow over Innsmouth, the story that the most of the movie is based on. We shall swim out into the brooding reef in the sea and dive down through the black abysses to Cyclopean and many-columned Yaha-Nathil. And in that lair of the deep ones, we shall dwell amidst wonder and glory forever. And then, do you want me to do one more, or do you want to do one?
Sure. The name of the cursed town is Imboca, or Imboca. According to Spanish language rules, boca means mouth in Spanish, so translating it and adding an S, you get Innsmouth, the original name of the town created by H.P. Lovecraft for his Shadow over Innsmouth story.
So there you go, guys. Ghouls and gals. That was my review for Dagon.
Yep.
Check it out. It's like $2 on Amazon right now. Show it a little love. It's definitely worth your time.
So now we're going to get on to mine, which... So, it was really funny when we were picking our each other's movies. Yeah, this scene's badass, by the way.
Oh, okay.
That's one of the scenes you would have really liked, actually. So it was really funny because like I had such a hard time finding a horror movie that was based off of mermaids, and this was considered one of the best ones. And it's called The Lure. It's made in 2015. Came out 2015. In Warsaw, a pair of mermaid sisters are adopted into a cabaret. While one seeks love with humans, the other hungers to dine on the human population of the city. It was directed by... I'm going to...
Do your best, buddy.
It was directed by Agnieszak Smolzinska. I can't read that.
It's okay, dude.
Yeah, I know. It was written by Robert Bolesto. I'm just gonna say all their first names because I'm not even gonna try that.
No, come on. You gotta do the first. Oh, do you want me to do it for
fine.
you?
Stars Marta Mazurek, Michelina Olzanska, and Kinga Price. This is fun fact. Just before I go on, is that this was actually the director's first movie that he ever directed, and it's a Polish movie. So fun. Was yours movie in English?
Yes.
God damn it. I thought it was going to be a fun thing.
Well, mine was English with Spanish dialect in it.
Okay, so the entire movie is all in Polish. So, I was watching a musical in Polish with English subtitles, and I was like, honestly, it didn't really take anything away from it. Like, I thought it was pretty cool. But so, as I'm watching this movie, I was like, gonna be honest, the only true way to do a actual decent mermaid horror movie would have to be a musical, because when you think about it, they use their voices to lure in their victims and stuff like that. I was like, that actually kind of makes sense. And so because I looked at all the reviews, because I was like, I don't want to watch this movie, because I was like, I don't know why. Like in the beginning, I was just like, it was just a struggle, because I actually do enjoy musicals, but I was just thinking of a horror musical, because I watched what was it? It was the organ. It's an opera about this guy who collects organs out of people that need the repairs. I can't remember the fucking name of it. It's gonna bug the shit.
The Repo Man?
Repo Man, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Repo Man, the Blood Orchestra.
Yeah.
The
Genetic Opera.
The Genetic Opera.
I know you're talking
so
about.
because I remember watching that movie and I was like, I was like, because everyone was like, it's so good, it's great. So when I saw horror musical, I was just like, God damn it.
I will actually say I wasn't one of those people that liked that movie. I didn't care for Paris Hilton's scenes. That was
yeah. But anyway, so I was just like, and I started reading the reviews about it, and every single person was like, I was going into this thinking it was going to be garbage, and it was one of the best musical horror movies I've ever seen. There's it gets you from the beginning. It's totally unexpected. And so I was like, okay, fucking, and then plus when me and you were discussing the movies, you're like, I can't do musicals, man. And I was like, fine. And
I have a hard time watching musicals.
Yeah. And it was fantastic. From the second the movie started, I was hooked. And a cool thing that I actually liked about this movie is they stuck pretty well to mermaid lore. So when they're in human form, it shows everything. They have no human genitalia because they're not humans. So they when the people who found the two girls, how they get found in the beginning is that they're singing to the next three main characters of the movie while they're in the ocean, and they're saying, pull us ashore, dry us off, and let us be human, and stuff like that. And so then they're trying to convince their boss at the cabaret to let the mermaids be in the act, and he's just like, they're children, because they're only 18 or something they're young girl. They're supposed to be 18-year-old girls and stuff like that. And so they're like, no, check this out. Just y'all leave. They tell everyone else to leave except for the owner of the cabaret. And they're just
mind blown.
Yeah, he's the main dude, he's just like, watch. And so he tells them to get naked, and so they get naked, and there's a lot of tits in this movie. Yeah. And so then they get naked, and at for a second they're like, oh, they're going to show everything. It's Polish. Of course they're going to show everything. But then, he turns them around. They have no butt. And then he's like, spread. And, he sits them down and says, spread them. There's nothing. Then he's like, oh, it's smooth like a Barbie doll. And, the owner of the cabaret is, super old. And he's like, what is this going to do for my thing? And he pours water on them. And then the mermaid tails come out. And what I really liked about it, the scene of them changing into mermaids was fantastic. Every time it shows them actually turn into mermaids, because it shows their it only shows it once of them fully transforming. Their legs fuse together and it turns into the mermaid tail. But the thing that I liked about it the most was that it's not the stereotypical mermaid tail. It's not the fin. It's an eel. And I was like, that makes more sense though of splitting into human feet.
Yeah.
When they dry off, it'd be like a big mermaid eel tail, and that's how they swim and everything. And like the detail on the tails though was fantastic. Like you couldn't even tell it was CG'd or like I'm fairly certain they used practical effects for the tails for the entire time. I was like, that's freaking dope. And then they actually show the struggle of the mermaid. Like they start drying out. Like you can't just keep splashing water on them. So they like, you see them like all lifeless on the ground, and they just like hurl them into the pool, and like they're just like floating there like belly up like like fish when they fish die and everything, and then all of a sudden they just snap to and they come back to life and they start swimming around under the water and everything. Like the effects were so great. So I thought that was really cool. And then another cool thing they added with the mermaids is how they talk to each other, because they're mermaid sisters, is they talked in echolocation like whales.
Oh, wow.
So they could only understand each other through like, there was like kind of like mind speak, but you sounded like fish and dolphins and stuff like that.
I
So
think we
thought
need
it
to
was
start
really
talking
cool.
to each other like that from now on.
Don't do that.
Let's see how annoying we can get.
I was gonna say, don't say that. That was obscene.
Yeah.
You're lucky if other people don't speak that. I mean, your listeners would have
dare
been offended.
Yeah. But that was really cool. Like just the small details in this movie is fantastic. And the one thing that like, okay, it made sense later on in the movie, but there was random moments where they just showed this random dude who was balding, like had this like scraggly hair, and then these two giant burn marks on his forehead, like where horns used to be. And I was like, oh, he's the devil. He's gonna convince one of them to start eating people, and the other one's gonna like, no, we love humans. And I was like, nope. Like, it totally makes sense when he comes back around, and like it starts making sense of a lot of stuff. Like it's just, there were just some scenes that they showed too early, in my opinion, or characters they showed too early, I think. And the first death that happens in this movie, it was a little disappointing, but at the same time, like it was still like gory enough. Like, so what happens is like the mermaid that wants to cannibalize the humans, you know, exactly how she's like exactly what mermaids are. She's like, she pretty much like gets this guy to fall in love with her.
Right.
He takes her to the car, and then she has him drive them down to the river, so she could clean. Because like it's smart, because she's like, you know, because she's about to be covered in blood, and it's like, I need to be by the river so I could clean myself off and be absolved of this crime. Like no one's gonna think of it. So all of a sudden you just see like the car like shaking and stuff like that, and you hear her moaning and him screaming, and then all of a sudden you just see her like ripping at him like inside the car, and there's blood all over the window. And I was just like, that's great. Perfect. And then you see her like actually like waddling, because the liquid from the blood got her wet enough she turned into her mermaid self, which I thought was really cool, because I was like, oh, it doesn't have to be just water. Oh,
Whatever gets you wet.
exactly. And so you see her actually like crawling in the sand as her mermaid self, and like how she has to like slither like a snake to get to the water. And she has like the heart of the person like in her mouth too, like as she's waddling to the water. I was like, that's pretty cool. All right, that's kind of cool. I thought that was really cool. And then so I mean, it ends up being a love story. It's a musical. Of course there's going to be a love story. So the other one's like falling in love with a member of their band and stuff like that. And so I thought the ending with them is pretty disappointing, but like I'll get into that in a minute, because that's kind of like a little bit of spoiler territory, because they follow the Little Mermaid logic to the T of the original story of where she falls in love with someone, and if he didn't love them, or if he didn't love her back, she would turn into sea foam. Yeah, it turns out. Hello.
Hey
to
there.
get some blood, to get free vampire blood. What's your favorite horror movie?
That's hard because I haven't seen a lot. But for now, I'm going to say Poltergeist.
Poltergeist.
Sound good. You get some free blood.
choice.
You get some free
Nice.
blood.
He said we could also get free
Spiderwebs?
spiderwebs.
Spiderwebs? Where are those spiderwebs?
I don't know what the spider
There
webs
they
are.
are.
We're like, we want all the free stuff.
Yes. I totally forgot about free spiderwebs. Yeah. Spiderwebs.
Thank you so much.
No
All
problem.
right, have a great
Go crazy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna need one of those too, actually. I'm
Yeah, you got
decorating
it.
the house later.
Fair enough. Free spiderwebs
Not
for you,
for the
sir.
season. I mean, just in general.
There's a lot of things we got to cover up there.
So one of my WTF moments was that, okay, so this lady cop figures out that it was one of the mermaid girls because their show is in the side of cabaret, and the mermaid shows that they're actual mermaids. And so, like, their very first on-screen thing, like, they're singing together, they have these beautiful voices, and they get dropped into this giant martini glass full of water, and in the nude, and they turn into mermaids. But that's their gimmick, is that they're actual mermaids, and that's how the whole cabaret is doing it. So this lady cop figures out it's one of them, and so she's interrogating the, like, evil one. She's like, I know it's you, and blah, blah, blah. And so there's this big music number with them dancing and stuff like that, and all of a sudden, mermaid lesbian sex scene. Like, she fucks her in her mermaid scene. I was just like, no. What? Like, just happens. Like, she turns her into a mermaid and, like, goes at it, and it shows everything. And, like, they're just going at it, like, hardcore. And then at the very end, when she, like, points a gun at the mermaid chick's head, and the mermaid chick, like, gets all demonic fit, like, they grow teeth and stuff like that, and then you never see her again. I was just like, what happened to the cop chick? Like, what? Like, that was a little disappointed in that, because I was just like, that makes no sense. Did she eat her? What happened? Is she just like, you know what, I gotta F a mermaid, I'm good? Like,
well, yeah, standard investigative procedure of police officers is you have sex with the perpetrator.
Yes.
And then if that works out really well, you're no longer needed for the stories.
Because I was just like, wait a minute, like, because, like, and it was a graphic scene, like, I'm not going to go into detail about it because I'm still, like, trying to comprehend exactly what I saw, but there...
You're like, wait, what part went where? What?
Yeah, I was exactly, like... I mean, they do show that when they're in the mermaid form, like, they point out where the vagina is on the mermaid tail, and I was like, so that's how they would have how a man would have sex with a mermaid. Because that was always a question, you know, when you think about it, like, if you were actually going to do it with a mermaid, like, they have a fish body... So, like, fish legs, what would you want the fish head and with
I thought Futurama addressed that. Did you guys ever
Exactly,
see that?
yeah.
She's like, no, we don't have sex. I just lay my eggs on this bed and then you fertilize them after I leave.
Yeah.
That's sex, right? You know,
mm-hmm. But in this one,
sex.
they straight up, like, go at it because the girl who falls in love with the boy was just like, she turns into a mermaid and she goes, stick it in. And the boy was just like, yeah. And the boy was just like, where? As much as I would like to, you're an animal, so I'm not going to do that. Like, wow. I know.
That's no bestiality. That's really
that's
the first.
This $20,
dude.
$20.
This movie was a lot smarter than I thought it was going to be, especially with the mermaid things. And so, one of my favorite, so there was, like, lesbian sex, mermaid sex part. That was a WTF moment for me. My favorite moment in the entire movie. So they start getting darker, like the mermaids, like, well, the one who cannibalizes starts getting darker, and she has a darker turn. She actually ends up meeting Triton. So he's the guy with the burned horns that you're like, because the entire time I was like, who the fuck are you? And he's just, and so she meets him, and he goes, well, this horn got broken off from a fisherman, and this one I ripped out myself, because, like, one was more mangled than the other. And she didn't think he was a merman, because she was just trying to, like, seduce him and stuff like that. He's like, no, we're more alike than you think. And so right when she was, like, going to touch him or whatever, his, like, teeth come out and she almost bites her. And she's like, oh, you're one of us. Like, she has this moment. And so he goes, I like your voice. She said, come sing with me. And then there's this badass punk scene. Like, it's an underground punk rock concert where, like, everyone's moshing and everything. And he has this giant mohawk up. And they start, like, singing. And I was just like, yes. I like this movie now so much more.
This is our niche.
Yeah, I was just like, because you never think of a punk rock scene in a musical and stuff like that. Because, like, most of the songs are actually uplifting and, like, serenading and stuff, and then there's just like,
society.
It was
structure.
Yeah, basically.
Fish tails.
Yeah, I would definitely say, like, you should watch this movie because, like, it's surprisingly good, and they do really good with the love story. And so then they start fleshing out mermaid lore where, like, Triton is talking to the evil sister, and he tells her, like, you better watch her because she falls in love with a human male, and he marries someone else. She turns into sea foam at daybreak of the following day. And so,
man, if only that would have happened to my ex.
Right?
I don't love it. Sea foam.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
And so this is going to be spoiler territory for like 2 minutes.
All right, I'll get up the timer.
You got to give me a timer because like the ending is key.
Okay.
In 3, 2, 1. So there's this part where she blows the guy underwater as a mermaid, and she just blows him because she sees her adopted mother blowing her adopted father, and she's like, I want to do that. And so they fall in love, and there's this entire scene where she decides that she wants to get operated to where she'll have human legs and a human vagina so she could be with the guy. This was a WTF moment. They show the entire operation. Like, they find some person who wants to be a mermaid, this chick, and they're like, we're going to body swap you, like, in this underground thing. And they body swap so she has human legs. And so, like, and then they end up having sex, but she bleeds everywhere because they decide to do it the night of her surgery. And he falls out of love with her, falls in love with this other girl that he ends up playing music with, and then they get married. And so Triton tells her, is like, you need to eat him before daybreak, or else you become sea foam. And there's this moment where, like, the thing is, you want her to kill him because he's such a piece of shit throughout the whole movie, too. Like, you don't root for him whatsoever. You hate this guy the entire time. And so then they're dancing and stuff like that on his wedding day. And so she, like, you see her turn all evil, and she's about to do it, but then, like, 10 seconds before, like, daybreak happens, she stops, and the sister's watching it happen. And, like, they do this cool scene where he, like, does a twirl, and then when you see her, and then he turns back around, sea foam all over him. Wow. And it's so good. It was sad, too. You're like, oh. And then the sister goes ballistic, rips his throat out, and then jumps into the ocean after everyone sees her do it. And I was just like, I'm glad he got his. I'm really glad he got
He
his.
had it coming.
He did have it coming, but
he knew it was coming. But 30 seconds too late, apparently.
Yeah, I know. Well, it was because the sister, the evil sister, didn't have to do it. The good one had to have done it.
Which the good one should have done it.
Exactly. The entire time you're like, come on.
Get it?
Yep. And cool. And that was the end of spoilers. And then, but another thing that they do is that the whole, like, if the mermaid loses a part of herself, she loses her voice. That actually stays true in the movie too, and I was like, that's pretty cool. Like, and it ties into the whole thing. But actually, honestly, even if you don't really care for musicals, I really recommend this movie.
Okay, I'll give it a try.
It's a good story. Like, you get invested in just like some of the weird shit that happens. You're just like, ha, what? And then the few scenes of gore that, like, there actually isn't really a whole lot of gore in it, but when it's there, it's good. Like, there's a scene where they rip these guys' hearts out and just start, and the mermaids are just standing there eating it. Like, they're just staring at each other like eating them like apples. Like, one of them, like, yeah, one of them, like, bites it and just goes, and, like, spits it out and, like, stuff like that, and then takes another bite. I was like, all right, that was pretty good. That's good. I like it.
I actually was watching the trailer as you were speaking about it. So great graphics.
Yeah, the graphics are done really, really well.
Really brilliant.
Right? It's so good. And, like, so the reason why I think the guy has it coming, one of the people has it coming, is because so she, the good mermaid girl, how she, like, shows her love into it and stuff. She actually rips off one of her scales and gives it to him and says, like, you know, as a two-handed bass player with this, you'll be a four-handed bass player, as in, you know, there'll be one. And I was like, oh, so that's why, like, at the end I was just like, yeah, fuck you. All right, cool. So I highly recommend this. Definitely give it a watch, even if you don't like musicals and stuff like that. And it is a foreign film, so, like, honestly, you could just read the subtitles and it's really good. Some fun facts about this. The mermaid tails were 6 feet long and weighed over 50 pounds. Go them. Oh, this is the first musical to come out of Poland.
Of course, it's mermaids.
Yeah. And it's based on Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tale The Little Mermaid, published in 1837. That's why there's so many cues to it. I thought that was really cool. And then 2,000 girls were tested for the lead roles. Damn.
That's a lot of women.
Yeah.
Like countrymen, like they were Polish, or I mean, were they like scouting surrounding areas and stuff like that?
I would think scouting.
It's like all the people in the whole world.
The director grew up in a restaurant with a dance floor that's similar to the one used as a main location in the film, which is the Cabaret Club. Yeah, cool. But yeah, that was my movie. I definitely recommend it, and because it does stick to a lot of the lore of mermaids and showing them that they're not just these beautiful creatures, that they're like exactly that. They're creatures. They're monsters.
So we're basically at the end of this one.
Yeah, this is the end of our live stream.
So
Or live recording.
Yeah, not
live
stream.
Live recording.
So we real quick want to give another thank you out to Mel for sitting down with us on our last episode. Thank you, Mel, for hanging out with us, dressing up as a vampire, and chilling with us. That meant a lot to us.
And thank you, David,
for coming in, sitting down, hanging out with us as well.
Yeah, and giving us a lot of input on mermaids and the lore. And
My
stuff
pleasure.
Like that.
You know, I love all this stuff. Grew up with a lot of old horror from a very early age, and going on to this modern day and age with different monsters and stuff. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. Yeah, and if you want to hear yourself talking to us and stuff like that, check us out.
Punk Rock Horror Podcast on our Facebook at Punk Horror Podcast and our Twitter at OfficialPHP.
And our Instagram, Punk Rock Horror Podcast, hashtag PRHP Podcast.
And thank you to Lauren for sitting down with us as well.
I wasn't going to forget about you, Lauren.
It's okay.
And if you want to send in your band info or strange stories to our email for us to read on our Monday episodes, please send them in to punkrockhorrorpodcast@gmail.com. Please consider going over to our Patreon and supporting us.
And before we sign off, we are actually going to be starting up a poll for our next 2 monsters.
Well, the poll's already up.
And it's already up. So go onto our website and vote, and there's going to be a link to the poll so you can vote for what 2 monsters we're going to do
for our next
2 episodes. Definitely check that out. It's between shapeshifters, demons, werewolves, zombies, and monster hunters.
Alrighty then.
Yeah. Awesome. And one last thank you to the life of the party and Brandon and Marcia for letting us record our podcast live here. So thank you, Brandon. You're standing right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Pleasure having you guys in here. I know everyone had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Had comments from customers all day long. Oh, who are those guys?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna have to go listen to that podcast. Sounds really awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait to see you guys back in here again. Maybe we'll do this again sometime.
Ooh.
Yeah, definitely.
Was this for the future?
Sequels.
Foreboding.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.